and welcome to this latest episode of This Is In. My name is Emily Gorman, and I am the Director of Community Engagement with AARP Indiana, and also your host for today's episode. I have a very special guest here with me today to discuss important issues and policies affecting Hoosiers of all ages, especially older adults. And we're also going to explore the impactful work that AARP is doing locally to make our communities more livable for everyone. I am thrilled to be joined today by Tim Morstad, our AARP Government Affairs Director of Livable Communities. And today we're going to be discussing Complete Streets. We're going to talk about what Complete Streets is, the role that the program contributes to making communities more livable, and how people of all ages and abilities can benefit. So, Tim, welcome to the show. I'm going to let you do a little quick introduction yourself.
Well, thanks, Emily. It's a pleasure to be with you today. As you know, Complete Streets is one of my very favorite topics. By way of a quick introduction, I'll share that I'm really fortunate to be part of a talented team here at AARP, both at the national office and in state offices across the country who are working on livable communities issues. There's housing, there's transportation, there's so much good work to be done to make sure that our neighborhoods, our communities are more livable. For my piece of it, I work for AARP's national office, as you said, in the Government Affairs Department, and I focus on livable communities issues. Specifically, I support our state office advocacy on transportation, but also telecommunications and broadband issues. What I do in that capacity is I read and analyze state and local bills, and I help develop comments and track trends and develop resources to help, hopefully, to be helpful to my state office colleagues like you, Emily, and your volunteer leaders who are doing important work across the country.
Yeah, and I can say without a doubt, you have been an incredible resource to me always. And I'm sure you're the same for states across the country. So we're very lucky to have a team of experts like you to help us with these issues. I wanted to talk today about Complete Streets specifically, as we mentioned at the top. And I'm hoping that by the end of today's little episode, we will have provided our viewers with a concise yet comprehensive overview of what Complete Streets are, what we mean when we say that. So I wondered if you could maybe give us kind of a detailed rundown of what Complete Streets are, and just the quick 101 for the audience, if possible.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So Complete Streets is a way of designing, building, and operating roads that work for everyone. It makes sure that streets are safe and easy to use for walking, biking, driving, and taking public transit. The idea is to create streets that work well for all users, no matter how they travel. So it's important to remember that Complete Streets is not a one-size-fits-all approach. For example, major streets may be upgraded with wider sidewalks and protected bike lanes. People walking may be given a head start at traffic lights. Street design techniques may be used to encourage people that are driving cars to travel at or below the speed limit. Things like better street lights can be incorporated to make it safer for everyone traveling at night. But it really is comprehensive. It goes on from there. Stormwater systems, for example, can be designed and maintained so that no one has to step or roll off their bus and into a giant puddle. If done well, Complete Streets really results in a balanced transportation system, really a network where people can walk, bike, drive, or catch public transit to the destinations all over their community.
And I love that you mentioned that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I find myself reminding myself of that all the time. What happens in Indianapolis might be completely different to what Complete Street would look like in Fort Wayne. And so it really can be adapted based on the needs. But with safety at the forefront of everything. And so I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about why this issue is so important to AARP specifically, and in what ways would adopting a Complete Streets approach benefit people of all ages, including older adults, obviously.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I advocated for complete streets in state houses across the country, and decision makers wanted to know the connection. Well, what does this mean for older adults? What does this mean for AARP? Why are you here talking to me about this issue? And I was quick to share that AARP and Complete Street, we were there at the very beginning. 15, 20 years ago, it was just generally observed that there was a road safety crisis across our country. The fatalities and serious injuries were continuing to go up. There were some efforts kicked off to try to really promote safe streets, but Complete Streets came along and said, okay, here's this concept of we can build it better. And it's not just a street, but it's the whole process. It's the community input. It's the built environment, as people in the trade like to refer to it as. So, over the last 15, 20 years, there's been substantial complete streets policies put in place across the country. But to your question, why does the AARP care? Why to older adults does this really make a difference? Number one, I'd say it improves accessibility. So features like smooth, well-maintained sidewalks, ramps, and pedestrian crossings make it easier for older adults to navigate safely. It reduces the risk of falls and improving access to public spaces. Number two, I'd say for older adults, Complete Streets really promotes safer travel. So traffic calming measures such as lower speed limits and speed bumps create a safer environment. It reduces the risk of accidents and allowing older adults to move through their community more confidently. Third, it really encourages active transportation. And I can't emphasize this enough. If we have accessible walking paths and bike lanes, it really provides older adults with opportunities to stay active, which promotes better health and mobility. It also promotes reliable public transit. So Complete Streets can enhance public transportation infrastructure, ensuring that older adults can easily access buses or trains, really improving their independence and reducing their reliance on private vehicles. So when you put all that together, Complete Streets really supports aging in place. It helps older adults stay in their homes and communities as they age by providing safer and more accessible transportation options.
Absolutely. And as you said, aging in place is probably at the core of almost every conversation that I'm having on a local level, and so important to most of what we're doing. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. I always remind people, to your point about, the smooth sidewalks and all of the different components that impact older adults, equally might impact people that are younger as well. And I think something really interesting is that some of our studies that have come out recently from AARP's research wing is that the majority of what older adults want is almost exactly the same to what younger adults want too and want to see from their community. So I always find that really interesting. But I wondered if my next question is something that I'm often hearing on the ground when I'm having conversations with folks in local communities about complete streets is the fear that implementing these policies would mean it's going to be an expensive endeavor. It's going to cost a lot of money for cities to commit to this. And so I wondered if you could tell us whether that claim is accurate. And I guess in general, what your response would be when you hear something like that.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind when I hear that sentiment is that it's not a zero-sum game. There are opportunities to make complete streets type improvements that don't necessarily add to the bottom line. But it is very important to remind people of the benefits that may not be immediately apparent of complete streets. And I always talk about reducing healthcare costs by encouraging walking and biking and active transportation. Complete streets help improve public health, reducing the costs associated with chronic diseases such as obesity or heart disease, which can save money to the healthcare system. Complete streets can help boost the local economy. So if you have safer, more accessible streets, it'll attract more foot traffic and it'll benefit local businesses. there are studies that show pedestrians and cyclists are more likely to shop locally, boosting the economy. I also like to point out there's decreased traffic congestion with complete streets. So it can help reduce vehicle dependency, so leading to lower traffic congestion and less wear and tear on the infrastructure. This could result in lower long-term maintenance costs for the city, the county, or the state. I mentioned increased property values. Improved streets can raise property values. For local leaders, this may be of interest. It could lead to increased tax revenues for local governments to help better fund future infrastructure projects. Lastly, on federal and state funding, there's a lot of complete streets projects that are eligible for grants or funding from federal or state sources. So this can help offset local costs. But then I circle back to complete streets is really an approach to transportation. This is it's a perspective to look at streets and say we want to accommodate all road users, and making improvements can be prioritized as such. The traditional notion is to just say, what's the biggest, fastest, longest street we can put in to move as many cars as possible? We want to make it more common and more easy to build out these streets and the infrastructure around them to accommodate other types of travel. And there's just a lot of benefits that some people just don't immediately see.
Yeah. That was an awesome answer. Thank you, Tim. I especially loved the part where you said that it could potentially reduce traffic. I feel like nobody likes sitting in traffic, so I feel like that makes it worth it on its own. But no, that's great. I was hoping that you would touch on the state and federal funding as well, and that some of these projects or communities can actually attract additional funding by having these complete streets approaches. So I'm really grateful that you touched on that. So if we zoom out and look at the country as a whole, I'm wondering if you might be able to share with us a little bit about how many communities and states that you've seen adopt complete streets policies, and then what are some of the benefits that you've seen in communities that have actually started to implement these changes?
Yeah, so this is the exciting part. As I mentioned, the complete streets movement has gained significant interest over the last 15 years or so. There are over 1,700 complete streets policies that have been adopted by various level of government across the country. However, and this is a big thing to consider, many of these policies, many of these 1,700 policies are resolutions or other policies without the relative permanence of law. So we counted fewer than about 300 are policies that are in place with the effect of law or local ordinance. And so this is why it's an exciting time. What I call it is the 2.0 version of complete streets. AARP and other organizations like Smart Growth America and the National Complete Streets Coalition, we're relaunching complete streets. And like I said, 2.0, and the idea is to have cities that have taken action, cities and towns, to take another look to see if all of the desired results were achieved. And what we'd like to make sure is that the necessary change happens to make streets more accessible, more safe. And so what we did recently at AARP is we overhauled what we had as model legislation or a model ordinance that cities or even states could adopt. And we've put it out there. So we've got model complete streets legislation that emphasizes the funding around making sure that the dollars flow towards projects that are going to enhance and promote complete streets. The new model legislation also includes performance measures and project selection criteria and annual reports to monitor and guide the implementation process. So we're super excited about rolling out this new approach, especially in cities and towns that have already adopted complete streets and policies. If we step back, we have to be excited by the energy and the continued momentum around the complete streets movement. But I'm even more excited that there's this new chapter to be written, and cities and towns that have taken action, and it's bold action to enact a complete streets policy. But the 2.0 is to really make sure that it results in the change, and that it reprioritizes funding, and there's accountability if the change doesn't happen. And that's that next step that many cities and towns can take.
And I can speak to that specifically here in Indiana. We've been working really closely with the city of Fort Wayne, who have a complete streets resolution, but we're looking for, as you mentioned, that lasting change component. So how can we make this last beyond just the immediate? And so I'm really excited to see where this goes and be a part of that 2.0. So I appreciate you going there with that as well. The audience will have seen a QR code come up while you were speaking, and that will have taken them to the model legislation. So if people wanted to check that out, they can go to that QR code and see what Tim was referring to. So moving on, I wondered if you could give us some advice. So if somebody is looking around their community and notices that maybe they feel like their streets might not be accommodating to all road users. For lack of a better term, they were incomplete streets. What would you say is the best way for a resident to potentially think about starting and maybe taking action or sparking some change in their community? Where would you advise them to get started?
Well, number one, you're already pointing there is to get involved. There's an old saying that there's nothing that will inspire people to petition their government for change than if the trash truck stops coming by and the streets get filled with trash, right? Transportation, in a way, and street safety issues is very local and very close to home for many people. That pothole that's on your street that might cause an accident is of equal danger and concern as the trash getting picked up and accumulating in the street. So it's a very local thing. Decision makers need to hear from impacted individuals and communities. So it's really great. AARP's got some wonderful tools to help communities along the Complete Streets path. The AARP Walk Audit is an assessment tool that evaluates the walkability and safety of a community's streets. It involves community members and stakeholders walking through areas to identify obstacles, hazards, and improvements needed for safer walking conditions. The audit highlights factors such as sidewalk quality, traffic speeds, crossing, accessibility. This is an activity that you can get together with your friends, family, whoever in your neighborhood. Go out there, print out, or take the digital version of the AARP Walk Audit and go survey your community and document where there are trouble spots. The goal here really is to create recommendations that encourage walking, improve safety, and support for people of all ages and abilities. It helps communities become more pedestrian friendly and promotes healthier, more active lifestyles. AARP has recently created a similar tool for bikes. It's called a Bike Audit Tool that similarly assists communities in making biking a more viable and attractive transportation option. And let me circle back on the grassroots piece. Grassroots complete streets advocacy is crucial for creating transportation systems that prioritize the need of all community members, especially those who walk, bike, or take public transit. Local residents play a key role in identifying the problems. They got to share their personal experiences and advocate for changes that reflect their specific needs. It really requires a bottom-up approach. You can't count on your city or town to be able to have the resources to go identify all the issues. They need to bubble up from community members who are experiencing barriers or dangers with certain infrastructure obstacles, that I'll call them. So grassroots efforts really can help build the momentum for change. It can increase public awareness. I can't say enough. Getting involved on transportation and safe street issues is a really satisfying experience because it's so close to home, and the level of government that is equipped and capable of delivering answers and a response and improvements isn't thousands of miles away across the country. It's actually really close to your home.
Yeah, that's so true. Your local government and your local communities are the ones that really can make a big difference. So I loved so many things that you touched on there. And I did just want to remind our viewers that all of our Livable Communities resources and toolkits are free if you want to download them or if you want to have them mailed to you. So I am going to skip to our last question and just say that, Tim, I would love to thank you again for joining us today and giving us all the ins and outs of everything Complete Streets. And I wondered if there was anything that you would like to leave us with today before I close everything out. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to mention?
Well, thank you for having me on today. I want to reiterate how energizing it is to hear that in Indiana, in small towns and in larger cities, that Complete Streets and Safe Streets efforts are alive, and they should be. We really do have a roadway safety crisis in our country. And for older adults, it's beyond safety. It's the ability to move around your community. It's the ability to have options on how you get to where you need to go, whether that's the pharmacy or the grocery store, or if it's just for maintaining or gaining a healthy lifestyle and trying to get out more. We can do better with our infrastructure. And what needs to happen is that our local officials need to hear of how our community infrastructure can be improved. I'm talking roads, I'm talking public transit in some cases. I'm talking the way we build a community makes a difference in how we live our lives. And dollars are spent each year. There's billions of dollars that flow from the federal, state to local governments to operate, maintain, build our roads and street systems. And there's choices made. We can make streets accommodate various modes of travel. We can make it so the person rolling down the street in their wheelchair actually can get around and be outside rather than isolated inside their home. So I just want to leave you with a note of gratitude and thanks for everyone who takes on this issue, because roadway safety really is important, and it's important for people of all ages. And I hope this conversation can inspire and equip people with the tools to get involved and to help keep making the change.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Tim. That was fantastic. And you actually teed me up perfectly to say that if anything you heard from today's conversation did inspire you and you want to find out more. So, for example, if you'd like to find out whether your community already has an existing Complete Streets policy, or more generally, if you'd like to find out how livable your community is, you can actually check out AARP's incredible tool and resource called the Livability Index, which you just type in your zip code and it will bring up this whole database of all this information that can give you a real breakdown of how livable your community is. So things like housing, transportation, all that sort of stuff is included in there. And that can be kind of a starting point for you if you're interested in making change in your own community. So Anna just put the link up for the Livability Index if you want to check that out. And with that, I will say thank you to Tim, and we will see you all next time.